Today you'll see a really floaty top and a dress made from the same pattern, of course. Sneak peek of one of them. Stunning V neckline with little gathers here on the front. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing, and I'm super excited to share 2 woven makes. I think when I make anything that's woven, it makes me extra happy because I'm a woven person at heart. It's what I love the most, and I have quite a nice collection of fabric, and it's really hard to choose when I'm going to sew something with a woven fabric. So my top and my dress are gorgeous. One is a solid, one is a print, and what I'm talking about is a new pattern from Sinclair Patterns called Isla top and dress. Very beautiful. I was immediately drawn to the neckline as soon as I saw the liner, and I applied to test the pattern, so I was part of the pattern testing. The V neckline there is stunning. It's not too low, but it comes down lower over here. It's nice and wide, very noticeable on the design. It's got 2 layers there, and then below that one on the front you have some subtle gathers right here on the upper chest. At the back the neckline is rounded, and there's also a little bit of gathers right there in the center back. Silhouette is flared, nice and roomy at the waist and hips, but nicely fitted on the upper chest and the bust. Gorgeous. There's 3 lengths for you to choose from: a top, a tunic, and a dress. If you want to make the dress, there are optional inseam pockets there, and we all know I never sew those, but they are there if you want them to be. This is a sleeveless design, finished with binding on the inside very neatly, and there are bust fitting options that I'll mention later in the sizing discussion. Because the Isla top and dress is a new pattern at Sinclair, it's discounted. The regular price is $10.99 and it costs $7.99, which makes it about 25-26% off. Now Sinclair Patterns usually has a sale that runs for over a week, sometimes a little bit longer. I'm not exactly sure of the date as I'm filming right now, but it's more than a week. When I find out, I will put that in the description box and the comment. Please use my affiliate link if my sewing content here is helpful for your sewing. It really helps me a lot if you use my link. You don't pay anything extra, it's just that a small commission comes back to me, and that's one of the ways I make an income making all these videos on YouTube. So if you use it, thank you so much. For fabrics, it was tested for lightweight woven fabrics with drape. I think those are the ones that are going to look nicer with a flared silhouette that's a little more voluminous. So my options have got to do with Rayon. Rayon and Rayon blends would be amazing. I think another fabric that would look amazing would be lightweight tencel. If you want something a little bit more structured, you could use a lightweight cotton lawn, a cotton gauze, lightweight linen. But then I think if you go into the realms of quilting cotton, I think it might be too structured. But that's always a personal choice. So I'd keep it nice and lightweight and drapey because of the gathers here and the volume of the skirt or the top. I've chosen a green solid. It's 80% rayon, 30% linen in the blend, so it's not lightweight, it's not sheer either. Light to medium weight I'd say, but still keeping the amazing drape. And my second option for the dress is a print rayon twill, which is amazing for a dress because rayon twill is a little heavier as well, while still keeping that amazing drape, and it's not sheer, so you wouldn't need to wear a slip under it. I think for the dress, I would not want to make it in anything too lightweight because who wants to wear a slip underneath, right? So I'm very happy with my choices. For the sizing, 0 to 30 US up to a 63-inch hip. As usual, Sinclair Patterns has the height files, so that's what you look at first. Petite, regular, and tall, and you'll get a really nice result. I'll show you a chart of what those heights are. I always use the tall file, and it makes fitting so much easier, to the point where I basically don't make any fitting changes. I just choose that. There was some fitting options for the bust: A, B, C, D, E, F. So measure your high bust, measure your full bust, look at this chart and see where you fall. From 0 to 2 inches, you'd be in the AB cup size. From 2 to 4 in the CD cup size, and then if you have a larger difference, you use the larger cup size option so that your fit is as good as it can get. I love that there's these cup size options here. I do think it's important, especially with woven designs, and 10 out of 10 for Oksana, including this new type of sizing for the bust in this pattern. Love that. At the bust, you're going to have about 1 to 1.5 inches of positive ease here, but it's going to be nicely fitted around there. But then as you go down to the waist and hips, depending on what size you're sewing, you're going to have 3 to 5 inches of extra space right there. So I love that. It's my favorite type of top to wear, same as dress. Personal fitting for myself is basically just choosing the toe file and my actual size, which is size 16 at the moment. I print that, I sew that, and voila, it's all good. No fitting changes. I didn't make any alterations to the pattern to fit myself, and I love that. Of course, This time I'm choosing a cup size option, which is the CD cup size, which is my sewing cup size. So that helped a great deal. For the sewing, I have filmed quite a lot for you. This neckline is quite different than others that you've sewn. There are quite a few steps. I'm not saying it's really hard. I'm saying that it's not going to take you an hour. If you just take it slowly and have some patience and hand basting, you're going to end up with an amazing V neckline here with gathers right there. Remember, there's 2 layers. When you just start, it might seem like it's totally wrong, but then it turns out totally right. We're using different seam allowances in these patterns, so you need to make sure you pay attention to that. Most of the seam allowances are 5/8. That also allows you to do French seams on the sides if you want to. I only reserve French seams for super lightweight fabrics like chiffon or very lightweight rayon. For the armholes, you use 3/8.
Let's whip this up in about a 15-minute clip.
Here are the main pattern pieces for the Isla top. There's not many of them. This is the back, this is the front. Now we only have a partial armhole here on both of these sides because this wide facing is actually going to complete partially the armhole. This is longer over here because it's going to be slightly gathered over here. Same as on this middle section of the V, there's going to be gathers there. What is missing here are my binding pieces because the armhole is going to be bound. It's a very short piece. It's only a partial armhole, so it's not much binding that you need to make. I'm going to use this same fabric. You're supposed to interface one layer and the other one not, but because this fabric is pretty flimsy and lightweight, I decided to interface both the layers so that my neckline looks really structured and really neat. If I had used a different type of fabric, maybe I wouldn't have done that, but that was my choice for this one. All of the layers are interfaced. So I have 2 of those and 2 of those. That is the V there for the front. I'm going to be stay stitching these armholes from the top area. It's not the shoulder actually, but from the top area up to the side seam, and do this close to the edge with a regular stitch length. I really don't want them to stretch out and end up gaping. It is a curved area, so I'll just do this before binding. I'm not going to be stay stitching the neckline because that's gathered. It's going to be a different technique, so only the armholes here. After stay stitching the armholes, what I've done is just put them right sides together, the front and the back here. This fabric is hard to see. It's basically the same on both sides, but they are right sides together. And now I'm going to sew and serge the side seams. After that, I'm going to bind the armholes. The armholes are going to have this shape, so it's going to be pretty easy to bind because you don't have to join binding anywhere. Remember, I have a video all about binding. The thumbnail looks like this, so you can refer back to that. This is going to be binding that's going to be hidden on the inside of the garment. This is another version I'm making, but I have already completed the steps I mentioned before. Side seams are sewn, and in this case I have already done the binding on the partial armhole here. Now I'm going to focus on how we sew the neckline over here, but before I show you that, I want to show you what the end result's going to be so that it's easy for you to visualize. This is the green version I was showing you before. I decided not to film on this one because my fabric is the same on the right and the wrong side. This is what we're going to end up with. We're going to end up with this wide V shape here. This completes the armhole over here, so that's where we bound up to, but then this takes over there and completes the top right there at the shoulder. 2 layers here. You can see that there's some gathers in the center over here of the V and in the center on the back. There are 2 layers, an inner layer and an outer layer, and we're going to sew the inner layer first and then the outer layer. Don't worry, we're not going to be snipping into little V points here. The technique is quite doable. It does take a little while, so this is not something you're going to sew in an hour, but the result is just absolutely stunning. First, I'm going to do some preparation work for these neckline pieces. All along the outer edge of these neckline pieces, we're going to fold this in towards the wrong side. So the neatest way for me to do that is to do a guide stitch using the metal plate as my guide. At the bottom I'm sewing with a longer stitch length at 5/8 of an inch, which is the seam allowance here, and I'm going to do this for the back neckline, which is rounded, and there's 2 of those. And then for the V front, it's the same, but it's just a V shape there. So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to go ahead and do all of these 4 pieces. I'm doing this with a contrasting red thread so I can see what I'm doing, and then that is really clear to me where I need to fold in, and it's super neat without me needing to measure. What I'm also doing before starting all this neckline is doing stay stitching along the inner edges of the neckline pieces. So I'm going from the shoulder into the center, and then from the other shoulder into the center. On this back piece you flip the fabric. I'll do that for both of the back pieces, and then I'll do the same thing for the front. It's just that on the front it's a V shape, but it is the same thing. I do want to make sure that these inner edges don't stretch out, because that will actually be your neckline. So this is really important to do before we start assembling all of this. Okay, here you can see my two sets of neckline pieces. One is going to be my outer layer. I chose this pair. The other one's going to be my inner layer. Now in the instructions it just suggests to interface the outer layer of your neckline. This one can be left non-interfaced, but I have found better result with interfacing everything, especially because the fabric is lightweight. So I decided to interface all of my neckline pieces. So they are pretty much the same. I just chose one to be on the outside, one to be on the inside. So this one is going to be on the outside. We are going to align the shoulder seams over here and sew them together and leave this ready for later, because this is going to be sewn in the second stage of the neckline. These inner layers are going to be sewn separately, first to the front or to the back or vice versa. It doesn't really matter. Here you can see the neckline pieces up closer. You can see I have already removed that guide stitch, but it helped me press this up very, very neatly right here. And this is the stay stitching I've done over here. I'm going to sew these shoulder seams, press them open, and just set this aside for later. Remember, if you're following instructions, the outer layer is going to be your interfaced layer. This one is interfaced, but I've also interfaced my other ones as well. Seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch here. Okay, here's our inner layer for the front neckline. We're going to do this one first. The same concepts we're going to do on the front are going to be done on the back. It's just that on the back it's going to be easier because we don't have this little V to deal with. So along the outer edges on your pattern piece, you would have had little marks like this. I have it there in blue, but then because I need to see it on this side, I marked it there in yellow. So I've got those marks over here, and this is in reference to where that partial armhole is going to reach on this area. And then over here towards the V point, we have marks over here as well on the inside, blue, but I marked them there in yellow. And this is the area that's going to be gathered. So those two references, you need to have them visible. They need to be well marked. If you forgot to mark them, go get your pattern piece and mark them, because otherwise you can't assemble this. Leaving this as it is with the wrong sides up like this, interfacing sides up, we're going to take our front piece. Remember, the side seams are sewn here, but you have full access to the neckline because this armhole is all extended. And this is going to look super wrong, but just make sure you have this correct. This neckline is wrong sides up. This front piece is right sides up. So what you need to see is your pretty side of the fabric. If you're following instructions, your inner layer will not be interfaced, but mine is. Just pay attention to that. Or if you're using lightweight fabric, I do recommend interfacing both layers. It just turns out neater and it's easier to work with. And over here we have the same marks we had over there. That little blue mark, I'm just going to put a pin on it right here, and I'm also going to mark it in yellow over here so I can see it. This is the only mark you're going to have on the front main piece. I'm going to do some gathering stitches now from here, from that mark into the center, and from this mark into the center. I'm going to do them separately. I'm not going to do a continuous one because I want to be able to gather like this and like this without compromising this little V. I'm going to be doing 2 parallel rows with a long stitch length, one at 1/4 of an inch and one at 5/8 of an inch, just so that I involve the whole area there that's going to be compromised with the seam allowance. On the back, we also have some marks, and I'm going to be doing the exact same thing, my second row. But I'll do it continuously there because it's rounded, not a V like here. I'm going to take my neckline again and put it behind it, but this goes behind. The main piece goes right on top. And over here, remember we had this little line further down from the shoulder, a little yellow line. This is where this is going to reach. This edge where the binding is going to be just within the folded edge right there. And the same thing over here. Here you can see that yellow line on the neckline piece and on the main front piece. I'm going to put them right on top of each other, and I need to match this edge to this folded edge right there on top of each other. And now I'm going to keep pinning up like this. I'm going to pin through all the layers, just making sure that the edge of my main front piece is right along the edge of the neckline piece right here. So this first section going down the neckline is going to be 1 to 1. We're not going to have gathers in this section. The gathers are going to be in the center area. So that section is pinned up to that dash here. Look at all this excess we have for gathering right here. And we're going to do the same from this side. After sorting out this area that's not gathered, then we're going to do the gathering. What I'm going to do here is take the V area and match it up right here on the V along the raw edge, exactly right there, and I'm going to put a vertical pin there. That's not going to move. And then I'm going to gather this section separately and then this section separately. I'm going to pull from here and gather into the center, trying to get this really evenly distributed. It's not a massive amount of gathering here. Okay, that's one side done. This raw edge also has to match the raw edge of the neckline that's folded in. This is not complicated at all. Anything that just takes a little longer, it doesn't mean it's complicated. It just means it's going to be extra pretty in the end. But I don't think that gathers are something that's super complex. Okay, now if you wanted, you could sew right now, but I'm not going to do that. I just rather hand baste and not deal with pins while I'm doing that. I don't want things moving around, especially this type of fabric. It does move around a little bit. Now that everything's neat and hand basted, I'm going to sew with this looking up at me, the wrong side of the neckline, the right side of the garment, the gathers on the top. I've put a pin right here where the V is so that doesn't move. I'm probably not going to remove that. And now with my 1/4 inch presser foot, I'm going to sew this from the edge right here. So this ridge of the presser foot is going to go right along here, and that's how we're going to sew this inner layer. Okay, that's how it looks like. You can see that this is the wrong side. You can see why this is the inner layer right here. It's just that we were sewing it from this other side. I'm going to remove all the mess, the basting stitches, the gathering stitches and all of that. And then I'm going to put this aside because we're going to do something similar with the back piece. Here is the back neckline. It's also wrong sides up, and the back main piece is right sides up here. I have a pin right at the center back that's going to match the center back of the neckline. So I'm just going to align that right there and pin it. I have already done the gathering stitches here on the back. It's a very small area, and the same as we did from the front, I'm going to pin this area. That's already the same as I did with the front. I'm just going to hand baste and then sew. Exactly the same. 1/4 inch from this edge down there using my 1/4 inch presser foot. After having these inner layers sewn, we have shoulder seams that need to be sewn together now, so I'm just going to align them and sew them quickly. Head over to the iron, press them open. After we have this shoulder seam pressed, I'm going to bring back this outer layer we'd put aside before and unite them. Okay, I've been to the iron, I pressed those shoulder seams, everything's good. Now this is what we'd just been working on, and this was the outer layer that was loose on its own. I've just put them right sides together here, as you can see. I lined them at the inner edge of the neckline, and they're going to match because they were cut from the same pattern piece. I've matched the shoulders right there. I've put a dot on the V where I'm going to pivot. I'm not doing pins here. I have already hand basted the 2 layers together. Now you're supposed to sew this with 5/8 seam allowance. I'm going to make the choice to sew it with 3/8 seam allowance. I find it easier to have an accurate seam allowance of 3/8, and in the end it will just make my neckline a tiny bit higher, which is not a bad thing. It's not going to change the fit of the top or anything. So I'm going to sew it at 3/8, but if you want to follow instructions, you can sew it at 5/8. As usual, we're going to be snipping here in the V. I'm going to do a nice little snip, not through it, but very close. And then along this V, it's a little bit curved. It's not completely straight, so I am going to snip in here to relieve some of the tension. I am going to snip closer together in the back neckline though, because that's really curved. Because I've only sewn 3/8 seam allowance, I'm not going to be trimming away the seam allowance. If I'd done 5/8, I would be trimming away. And then we're going to extend this and do understitching. Okay, so this one that's loose is the outer layer. The one that was sewn onto the garment is the inner layer. So when we extend this, we want the seam allowance going towards this one, towards the one that's sewn to the garment. So I'm going to put a pin right there, and then we're going to edge stitch all the way around. I'm going to start doing this in the V section, but not exactly at the V, about 3/8 of an inch after the V. Remember, the seam allowance is underneath the inner layer, the one sewn onto the garment, and this outer layer is this way. here where the V is coming up again, I'm going to stop a little before it. Okay, now I've turned my garment right sides out, and this neckline that we've just sewn, I'm going to push it out where it's going to be like this, and you can see that this is the outer layer that we're going to top stitch now. This next stage is one that would take me a little bit longer because I'm going to hand baste everything in place, make sure everything matches. This is going to be the top of the armhole over here. We have these 2 layers that are going to match right there and are going to be edge stitched together, and everything should line up super neatly. We're going to cover these gathers and then sew on the edge right here all the way around, and that's the way it's finished. So I'm going to go to the iron and press this nicely, pin it, hand baste it, and then that is the next step, which is to top stitch from the right side of the garment, which makes total sense. This inner layer has already been sewn down. This stitch that we're going to do on the edge now is going to come up lower than the one that we've done before, so we're going to have 2 rows of stitching on the inner layer but just 1 visible on the outer layer. So it's not as complex as you think. It just takes a little while. It just needs a little bit of patience, but I think it's worth it because it's so pretty. Okay, the hand basting was super worth it for me. You can see my stitches there, and have pretty much the same distance here on the back as well. So when I sew, I'm going to be catching both layers, and it's going to be so much nicer than dealing with pins. You can see that the gathers here are pretty discreet. It's not an excessive amount of gathers in the front. At the back here, it's just a nice little detail as well. So I'm just going to take my presser foot I've been using and just edge stitch all along this side, and that's the end of the neckline. And then to finish this garment, all I have left to do is the hem, which is super easy. This is my first version. It's a lovely green. I love it so much. And I was thinking about a pair of pants that have the same color, even though it's a whole different fabric. So thinking about monochromatic, I'm into that a little bit. And look at this, super lovely. A little while ago, I shared a video on my channel all about block fusing and the way that I like to interface. And this was one of the examples I was showing. Have a look at that one if you want to know more about interfacing and why this comes out so neat. I did choose to interface the outer layer in the inner layer because I thought that was just going to give me more structure for this type of fabric, and it turned out very, very neat. Matching thread right here, lots of hand basting to get this super neat, nice and crisp over here. Very lovely. Binding in there. So this armhole, when you're first sewing the binding, is only partial, and then this is completed by this rounded edge right there. I did not include sewing the binding today because I have a full video about it. I'll also leave that one linked down below. Super, super neat. Then it's just side seams and a normal hem. This is a top version. It's so, so lovely. I mean, I've whipped up 4 ways to style it, so I'm excited to share that. Let's see. This is my first Isla top from Sinclair Patterns. I made a size 16 with a toe file, 0 changes to the pattern, made just as is, and I love the fit here. The color of the pants is pretty much the same, even though it's a linen fabric. These are my poppy pants, also from Sinclair Patterns. And I love these trousers because they're not wide, they're not tight. I think they go perfect under something more voluminous. Flared silhouette, it's nice and roomy at the waist and hips, but nicely fitted in the chest. Up closer you can see this stunning neckline. There's 2 layers there. I interfaced both of them just to give it a bit more structure because this fabric wasn't too heavy. And at the back you have some gathers underneath the rounded neckline area. The V neckline is not too deep, sleeveless, good coverage on the armhole, and I really love it. It's really floaty, lovely. I love this monochromatic look, and it just feels so lovely on. It feels like you have nothing on basically. Worth your time to get that V nice and the neckline and the gathers nice and neat. I think the design is stunning. Because this top is more voluminous, I've paired it with a skirt that goes with everything from Sinclair Patterns. It's in a knit. It's fitted at the waist and hips, but then has a flounce and it flares out, so you get the volume towards the hem. But at the hip it's still fitted, and that's what I need to balance the volume on the top. Perfect length here at the mid hip, I find, at least for my height, my proportions. And this is an outfit that felt amazing on, so good. I will wear this to go anywhere and I'd feel really, really good. Love the combination of the green and the navy. You can't go wrong. I would usually try to keep my bottoms fitted, so I've got some white flared jeans here. The flared style of the jean, wider hem at the bottom while keeping it fitted at the thigh, is a good mix for this type of top that's got more volume on the top. I am matching the shoes. I know some people are not into that. I am very much into that. I don't think I'd want to wear this with wide leg pants. Again, the length of this top is perfect. It's the length that was in the pattern. I didn't make it shorter or longer, so I think it's really good. And it's a super, super wearable top. I absolutely love it. The next outfit is probably my most favorite one. I found the skirt I made years ago in a printed linen that has the perfect green there in the tropical print. This time I have tucked in my top into the skirt, so it creates a little bit of blousing in the front and the back, highlights the waist a little bit with this A-line skirt. I've got matching sandals, of course, with heels. I love this outfit. This is an outfit I would wear to church and I'd feel really, really good. And I'm so glad I have the skirt that goes perfectly, the solid on the top, the print on the bottom. It's a sort of staple type of way to dress for me, and this way you can just tuck it in and it doesn't matter. Keep all that volume inside the skirt and still highlight the waist a little bit, so love it. I feel absolutely amazing in this outfit. I had forgotten about the fourth outfit you saw there with that skirt. It was tucked away somewhere the other day. I was looking for something else and that skirt popped up, and I remembered that green, it matches, so I paired that together and it's a really nice outfit. I feel amazing. Now for my dress, it's all in the same pattern piece. The sewing is all the same. This is the one you saw in the tutorial. I chose to sew this one for the tutorial because the inside of the fabric is white, so it's a clear difference to see what I was doing. With the green one, it all looked the same. It would have been a bit confusing. And it's just a longer side seam basically. There's nothing different. It just flares out a little bit more. And with this one, because it's a print, the detail is less noticeable, but I think you still can see the V. I think it's really, really pretty. Gathers right there. At the back, we also have some gathers in the center. Binding there that I made with a little bit left over. It's all exactly the same, just longer. I really love it. I didn't make any change to the length of the dress. This is the length that the dress had for the toe file, and it fits amazing right above my knee where I want it. And then if I belt it, it goes a little bit shorter, but not too much. So let's see this one styled three ways on its own and then with some toppers. This is my second version of the Isla from Sinclair Patterns. This time it's the dress that's also in the pattern. I didn't make any length adjustment. This is the original length of the dress, size 16 toe file, and it hits perfectly like this, just hitting above my knee. Very nice and voluminous, but fitted at the top, which is important. And I would wear it like this. I don't always need to highlight my waist. This fabric is just stunning. It's a heavier rayon twill, so it means that the drape is amazing and it's not sheer, which is what's great about rayon twill. I don't think I would have liked to make the dress in a lighter fabric because then I'd have to wear a slip. Sometimes there's options where I'd like to wear a belt, and here it is. It does shorten a little bit because the belt pulls up the hem a little bit to get that blousing, but I still think it's not too short. This is a perfect length for me. There is a closer look at the neckline. Because this is a print, it's not so noticeable as the green version, but you can still see the gathers. The gathers aren't too dramatic. Lovely armhole, beautiful to sew up. I also interfaced both layers of the neckline here just to make it easier. Here is a closer look at the dress with a belt, which is always an option, and I would always wear it with a belt if I'm going to layer on top a jacket of some type or a topper. So let's see those options. This This blazer is slightly oversized and slightly longer, and I would typically not pair it with something voluminous on the bottom, but I think I can get away with most things just because of my height. So I think this looks amazing. The caramel color matches perfectly the print under there. I've got a matching belt and some booties. Love this look. This would be perfect for autumn winter for me because it's very mild down here. Probably for you it would be more sort of spring, autumn. I love the color of the blazer and love that this background is navy with the caramel. I love the combination with the boots. Love everything about it, and this is definitely an outfit I'd wear when it gets a little bit cooler and I still want to wear this dress. The V neckline underneath also looks really nice underneath the lapel. And here is a different look, this time with sneakers and a denim jacket. I can really dress it down but still look like I made an effort. Lovely also for spring or autumn when I do want a layer on top and want to be comfortable. So the key here for me is to use a belt. I wouldn't want to wear the dress just on its own without the belt with a layer on top, because then I'd feel like I'm drowning in fabric. The belt shows where the waist is. It's key for flared swing style dresses like that to have a belt as a backup if you want to wear a jacket. At least that's what I think, and that's how I feel the most comfortable. Love the denim here. There's no way you can go wrong. Matching caramel sneakers. Absolutely love it. I really enjoyed these. It really allowed me to slow down and just take it slow. I knew I could not rush these to get a really neat result. And it's my favorite type of sewing, let's be honest. I really enjoy taking my time. The hand basting is not tedious at all because I know what the outcome's gonna be. So every little hand stitch on both of these was super worth it, and I love it. It's just so pretty. I mean, I'm a sucker for a V neckline, and there's different ways to do a V neckline, but this one is just stunning. I take my hat off to Oksana, the designer, for making something so pretty like this. It's so wearable, nice and wide and breezy, where you can live your life and be comfortable. So I highly recommend. I think you are going to enjoy it. If you just slow down a little bit, watch my tutorial, you'll be able to do it for sure. The instructions have lots of pictures. You'll be able to follow along there as well. Remember, my videos are my way of sewing. They're not exactly the same as instructions sometimes, but pretty close. Don't forget to check out the Isla top and dress at Sinclair Patterns. It's about 25% off, around there. You'll see all the information the day until the sale goes through in the description box and the comment. Remember to use my affiliate link. That is all from me. I'll see you back at this channel with more sewing very soon. Bye.